Take the guest room, my husband told me when his pregnant sister and her husband showed up unannounced, or move out. His sister even added with a grin, "It's great if you're gone by the weekend." I stood frozen in my own living room, the penthouse I inherited from my grandmother. Derek's eyes were cold, distant, like I was already gone. Amber's hand rested on her pregnant belly, smug and territorial. That's when I realized this wasn't spontaneous. This was planned. I walked to the bedroom with my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my chest. My hands trembled as I reached for a suitcase from the closet. Behind me, I could hear Amber's laughter echoing through the penthouse, high and triumphant. This penthouse had been my grandmother Patricia's pride and joy. She'd bought it 30 years ago, when downtown Seattle was still affordable, back when she was building her art dealership from nothing. I'd spent countless afternoons here as a child, sitting on her velvet sofa while she told me stories about the paintings on her walls. When she passed 3 years ago, she left it to me with one condition, written into the trust, my name only, no joint ownership, no exceptions. She'd been married 3 times and divorced twice. She knew what she was doing. The penthouse was worth about $3 million now. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, 2,000 square feet of hardwood floors and crown molding, a chef's kitchen with marble countertops, 2 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, and a balcony where you could watch the ferries crossing the water at sunset. I met Derek 6 years ago at a coffee shop near the architecture firm where I worked as a junior designer. He was charming, funny, attentive in ways that made me feel seen. We married 5 years ago in a small ceremony at a vineyard in Woodinville. Back then, I was just starting my career, living in a studio apartment in Capitol Hill, driving a 10-year-old Honda. Derek worked in construction management and made decent money, but nothing extraordinary. Everything changed when Grandma Patricia died. Suddenly, I owned property worth millions. Suddenly, Derek's family started making comments. His mother, Barbara, would ask why we didn't invest in Derek's brother's startup. His father would suggest I was being selfish, keeping the penthouse instead of selling it and splitting the money. And Amber, Derek's younger sister by 3 years, started showing up uninvited, walking through rooms like she was cataloging what she'd change. Derek himself transformed slowly. At first he was supportive, sweet, telling me how proud Grandma Patricia would be of me. But within months, he started making decisions about the penthouse without asking me. He'd invite his family over without warning. He'd talk about renovations we should do, always saying we, always acting like it belonged to both of us. I'd pushed back gently, reminding him it was my inheritance. He'd smile and say, of course, but the resentment in his eyes grew sharper each time. Now, standing in the bedroom we'd shared for 3 years, I pulled clothes from drawers with shaking hands. From the living room, I heard Amber saying, "Finally, we can fix this place up properly. The crown molding is so dated. And that art? I never understood why anyone would pay money for that garbage." I stopped moving. That garbage included a small Chihuly glass sculpture my grandmother had commissioned, a series of prints from a local indigenous artist she'd mentored, a painting of the Seattle skyline at dawn that she'd bought from a struggling artist who later became famous. Every piece had a story. Every piece was irreplaceable. But I didn't go back out there. I didn't argue or defend or explain. I took my important documents from the safe in the closet. The penthouse deed, the trust papers, my grandmother's will, my passport, birth certificate. I packed 3 days of clothes. I took my laptop and my jewelry box. Derek never came to the bedroom. Not once. Not to apologize or explain or even say goodbye. I walked out the front door at 7:30 that evening with 2 suitcases and my purse. Amber and Craig were sitting on my grandmother's antique sofa, drinking wine from my grandmother's crystal glasses. Derek stood by the window, his back to me. None of them said a word as I left. I checked into the Westin downtown, A hotel 4 blocks from the penthouse. The room was generic and sterile, nothing like home. I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to process what had just happened. My husband of 5 years had just thrown me out of my own home. His sister had practically celebrated. And I'd just left. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the moment, searching for signs I'd missed. How long had Derek been planning this? Had he always seen me as a ticket to wealth? Had he ever loved me at all? By morning, I was exhausted but clear-headed. I called my friend Rachel, a paralegal I'd known since college. She answered on the second ring. "Rachel, I need advice," I said, and my voice cracked despite my best efforts. After I explained everything, she was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "Tammy, you need to check your bank accounts. Right now." My stomach dropped. I hadn't even thought about money. I opened my laptop and logged into our joint savings account. We'd had $87,000 in there last week. Money we'd saved for renovations, for travel, for the future. The balance showed $6,200. I refreshed the page, certain it was an error. Same number. I clicked through the transaction history. 5 days ago, Derek had transferred $81,000 to an account I didn't recognize, an account that wasn't in my name. I called the bank immediately. The representative was polite but firm. "Both account holders have equal rights to joint funds," she explained. "If your husband transferred the money, that's within his legal rights. You'd need to take it up with him or pursue legal action." I tried to transfer the remaining $6,000 to my personal checking account. The system rejected the transfer. "Account frozen due to dispute claim," the message read. I called back. The same representative explained that Derek had filed a dispute that morning, claiming marital conflict. Until it was resolved, neither of us could access the funds. I hung up and stared at my laptop screen. In less than 24 hours, Derek had taken almost everything and locked me out of the rest. My next call was to my grandmother's estate attorney, Mr. Harrison. He'd handled the trust, the will, the transfer of the penthouse to my name. He'd know what to do. The phone rang 4 times before someone picked up. "Harrison and Associates, how may I direct your call?" "I need to speak with Mr. Harrison, please. It's urgent." A pause. "I'm sorry, but Mr. Harrison retired 6 months ago. The firm has been dissolved. Can I direct you to another firm who might help you?" My hands went cold. "What about his files? My grandmother's estate files?" "Those would have been returned to clients or archived. You'd need to contact Mr. Harrison directly for information about your specific case." She gave me a phone number. I called it immediately. It was disconnected. I sat there in that hotel room, my mind racing. All of my legal documents, all of the original trust paperwork, my grandmother's will, the deed with my name on it as sole owner, they were all in the safe in the penthouse. I had copies, but in a legal battle, originals mattered. And I couldn't get into the penthouse to retrieve them. 3 days later, I sat in the office of Jennifer Walsh, a family law attorney Rachel had recommended. Her office was in a high-rise in Bellevue, all glass and steel and expensive furniture. She listened to my story without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "Okay," she said. "First thing we need are those original documents from the penthouse, the trust paperwork especially. That proves sole ownership beyond any question." I explained about the safe, about not being able to get in. "We'll draft a demand letter," Jennifer said. "Legally, he has to allow you to retrieve personal property. If he refuses, we can get a court order." She drafted the letter that afternoon. It was professional, firm, citing Washington state law about marital property and personal effects. She sent it via email and certified mail to Derek at the penthouse. 2 days later, the response came. But it wasn't from Derek. It was from his attorney, a man named Marcus Brennan, whose letterhead listed an address in one of Seattle's most expensive office buildings. My stomach sank as I read the letter with Jennifer on a video call. Mr. Brennan's letter claimed I had abandoned the marital home, that I'd left of my own volition without coercion, that Derek was willing to allow me to retrieve personal clothing and toiletries, but that any property disputes would need to be resolved through proper legal channels. But that wasn't the worst part. Attached to the letter was a document I'd never seen before. A quitclaim deed dated 2 years ago. It showed the Penthouse ownership transferred from my name alone to joint ownership with Derek, 50% each. My signature was at the bottom, notarized and official. I never signed that, I told Jennifer. My voice sounded distant, like it was coming from someone else. I would never sign that. My grandmother's trust forbids it. Jennifer's expression was grim. The notary stamp looks legitimate. We'll need a handwriting analysis, but, Tammy, that's going to take weeks, and it's expensive. How expensive? $5,000 to $10,000 for a thorough analysis. I had about $4,000 left in my personal checking account. My credit cards were nearly maxed from the hotel. I'd been placed on administrative leave from work after my boss heard rumors about my personal situation and decided I was too distracted. No pay until I sorted things out. Can we do payments? I asked. Jennifer nodded slowly. We can work something out. But, Tommy, there's something else. She pulled up an email on her computer and turned the screen toward me. Derek's attorney is filing for legal separation, and he's claiming the penthouse as marital property subject to division. My breath caught. Can he do that? He can file for it. Whether he wins depends on proving that quitclaim deed is legitimate. Jennifer paused. He's also making other claims, that you've been financially irresponsible, that you've been emotionally unstable. He has a statement from his sister claiming you threatened her and her unborn baby. That's insane. I've never threatened anyone. I know. But we need to respond to all of this, and we need to do it properly. Jennifer's expression was sympathetic, but serious. This is more complicated than I initially thought. Derek has clearly been planning this for a while. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that forged signature. It looked so much like mine. The loops, the slant, the way the T crossed. Either Derek had practiced extensively, or he'd hired someone professional. The next morning, I decided to try one more time to get into the penthouse. I drove downtown and walked into the building lobby. The security guard, Paul, had always been friendly. He'd worked there for 5 years, knew me well. Hey, Paul, I said, trying to sound casual. I need to grab some things from my place. His expression shifted uncomfortably. Miss Tammy, I'm sorry. I have instructions not to let you up. Instructions from who? From Mr. Derek. He said. Paul hesitated. He said you've been having some troubles, that you're not well, that for everyone's safety, you're not allowed in the building. I felt my face flush. Paul, I live here. It's my home. My name is on the deed. He looked genuinely sorry. I'm just following orders, ma'am. I could lose my job. Maybe you should talk to building management? But building management referred me back to Derek. I was locked out of my own home, and there was nothing I could do about it without a court order. Jennifer filed an emergency motion the next day, but the filing fee was $500. The court date was set for 3 weeks away, and Jennifer needed a retainer of $15,000 to continue representation. I didn't have $15,000. I called my parents that night. My father answered, his voice warm and familiar. Sweetheart, we've been worried about you. Derek called us. He said you've been struggling. My chest tightened. Dad, that's not true. Derek is lying. He forged documents and stole money and threw me out of my own home. Honey, my mother's voice came on the line. They'd switched to speaker. We love you. If you're having a hard time, we want to help. But Derek showed us some concerning messages you sent. Maybe you should talk to someone? What messages? Just, my mother paused, some texts that seemed angry, threatening. That's not like you. Because I didn't send them, I said, my voice rising despite myself. He's making this up. He's manipulating all of you. There was a long silence. Then my father said, gently, we think maybe you should come stay with us for a while. Get some rest. Figure things out. They didn't believe me. My own parents thought I was having a breakdown. I hung up and cried for the first time since this started. 1 week later, I sat in family court with Jennifer beside me. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, with fluorescent lights and worn carpet. About a dozen other people sat scattered in the gallery, waiting for their own cases to be heard. Derek arrived with Marcus Brennan, his attorney. Derek wore a suit I'd never seen before, expensive-looking, charcoal gray. He didn't look at me. Behind them, Amber waddled in, her pregnancy belly prominent under a flowing dress. She looked pale and fragile, one hand pressed to her lower back. I felt Jennifer tense beside me. She's playing it up, Jennifer whispered. The judge, a woman in her 50s, with graying hair and wire-rimmed glasses, called our case. Judge Patricia Morrison. The nameplate on her bench read. I wondered if sharing my grandmother's name was a good sign or just cosmic irony. Marcus Brennan spoke first. He was polished, confident, his voice carrying easily through the small courtroom. He painted a picture of a troubled marriage, of a wife who'd become increasingly erratic after inheriting significant wealth. He claimed I'd shut Derek out of financial decisions, made reckless purchases, refused to communicate. Then he brought up the incident with Amber. My client's sister, who is 7 months pregnant, was staying at the marital home when Mrs. Walker became verbally abusive, he said. She made threats against both Mrs. Craig and her unborn child. When my client attempted to de-escalate, Mrs. Walker stormed out and has since refused all communication. That's not what happened, I said, before Jennifer could stop me. The judge looked at me sharply. You'll have your turn to speak, Mrs. Walker. Jennifer stood and presented our side. She was good, careful, methodical. She explained about the forged quitclaim deed, about the stolen money, about Derek's coordinated plan to steal my property. She submitted copies of the trust documents, proving sole ownership. But then, Marcus Brennan played his next card. Your Honor, we have evidence that Mrs. Walker has been researching how to hide assets in anticipation of divorce. He handed a stack of papers to the bailiff, who delivered them to the judge. These are screenshots of internet searches from Mrs. Walker's laptop. How to transfer property secretly, hiding assets in divorce, how to drain joint accounts. I felt the blood drain from my face. I'd never searched for any of those things. There's also the matter of these text messages. Marcus submitted another document, sent from Mrs. Walker's phone to my client over the past 2 weeks. Threatening messages, profanity. One message explicitly states she'll destroy him. Jennifer objected, questioned the authenticity, demanded forensic verification. But the text showed my phone number. The timestamps matched. To anyone looking, they appeared real. I wanted to demand a forensic investigation, but I could see the judge's expression growing impatient. We were one case in a long day of cases. She didn't want complications. She wanted quick resolutions. Your Honor, Marcus said, his voice grave, we have one more matter. Yesterday afternoon, Mrs. Walker appeared at the building where the marital home is located. Security footage shows her arguing with the guard. The guard has provided a sworn statement that she appeared intoxicated and made threats. That's a complete lie, I said, standing up. I was sober. I was just trying to get my belongings. Jennifer put a hand on my arm, urging me to sit. The judge looked tired. She glanced at the clock on the wall, then at the stack of papers in front of her. Based on the evidence presented, I'm granting a temporary restraining order, Mrs. Walker. You are not to go within 500 feet of the property located at the Penthouse address. You are not to contact Mr. Walker directly. All communication must go through attorneys. Your Honor, Jennifer said quickly, we need access to retrieve personal property and documents. That can be arranged with proper supervision at a later date. The judge made a note. I'm scheduling the full property hearing for 6 weeks from today. At that time, we'll address the ownership dispute and any other marital assets. 6 weeks. 6 weeks during which Derek had full, unsupervised access to the penthouse and everything in it. We left the courtroom in silence. In the hallway, I saw Amber standing near the elevator, her hand on her belly, a small smile on her face. Derek stood beside her, talking on his phone. Craig, Amber's husband, was there too, looking uncomfortable in an ill-fitting suit. As we walked past, I heard Amber say into her own phone, her voice low but audible, 6 weeks, and it's done. The buyer is ready. I stopped walking. Jennifer grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the stairs. Did you hear that? I asked. They're planning to sell the penthouse. We'll file an injunction to prevent sale, Jennifer said. But Tommy, I need to be honest with you. That's going to cost more money. And with that quitclaim deed on record, even if it's forged, the judge might not grant it. How much more? Another $5,000 minimum. I didn't have another $5,000. That night, I moved my belongings from the hotel to Rachel's apartment. She insisted I stay with her, wouldn't take no for an answer. I slept on her couch in the living room, my suitcases tucked in a corner, feeling like a refugee in my own life. 2 weeks after the restraining order, my life had completely fallen apart. Jennifer filed the injunction to prevent the sale of the penthouse, but the judge denied it. With the quitclaim deed on record, Derek had legal standing as a co-owner, and co-owners could petition for sale of jointly held property. The fact that the deed might be forged didn't matter yet. That would be determined at the full hearing, still 4 weeks away. I discovered Derek had maxed out our 3 joint credit cards, $42,000 in debt, cash advances, purchases I didn't recognize, charges at stores I'd never been to. The credit card companies said I was equally liable. They wanted payment. My personal credit cards were suddenly canceled. When I called to ask why, the representative said fraud alerts had been filed. Someone, presumably Derek, had called pretending to be me and claimed the cards were stolen. It would take weeks to sort out. The hotel where I'd initially stayed sent a collections notice. Apparently, Derek had disputed the charge on the credit card I'd used, claiming I'd used it without permission, even though it was my own card with my name on it. My credit score, which had been excellent, dropped 200 points in a matter of days. I applied for new credit cards to cover basic expenses. All denied. At work, my boss called me into his office. "Tammy," he said, his voice careful, "we've heard some things. There was a complaint from the Reynolds project." "Mrs. Reynolds said you seemed distracted during your last meeting." "I was focused," I said. "The meeting went fine." He shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I like you. You do good work. But with everything going on in your personal life, maybe it's best if you take some time off, just until things settle down." "I need to work," I said. "I need the money." "It's not really a request." He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Consider it administrative leave. Unpaid. Once your situation is resolved, we'll reevaluate." I cleaned out my desk that afternoon. A few coworkers asked if I was okay. Most avoided eye contact. I tried to borrow money from friends. Everyone was sympathetic but cautious. Derek had been busy on social media, making carefully worded posts about dealing with a spouse's mental health crisis and protecting family. He never named me, but everyone who knew us understood who he meant. My phone buzzed constantly with concerned messages. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" "Derek said you've been struggling." The subtext was always the same. They believed his version. Rachel showed me Derek's Facebook page one night. He'd posted a photo of himself looking tired and sad, with a caption about how difficult it is to watch someone you love spiral and how important it is to set boundaries even when it hurts. The post had 300 likes, and dozens of comments offering support. I wanted to respond, to defend myself, to tell the truth, but Jennifer had warned me against social media engagement. Anything I said could be used against me in court. So I watched my reputation crumble in silence. 3 weeks after the restraining order, I was down to my last $2,000. Jennifer needed another payment to continue representation. The handwriting analysis still wasn't scheduled because I couldn't afford the $10,000 retainer. The court date was 3 weeks away, and I was running out of time and money and options. I called my parents again. This time, my mother answered alone. "Mom, I need help," I said. "I need to borrow some money, just to get through this." "Honey, we can't enable this behavior." She sounded sad, but firm. "Derek sent us screenshots of your spending. Thousands of dollars on shopping, restaurants, cash withdrawals. You need to address this yourself." "Mom, those aren't real. He's making this up." "Sweetie, we love you, but we can't keep helping you if you won't help yourself. Maybe if you apologized to Derek, worked on your marriage, got some counseling." I hung up before she could finish. I sat on Rachel's couch that night, staring at my bank account on my phone. $1,863. In 3 years, I'd gone from owning a $3 million penthouse and having a stable career to sleeping on a couch with less than $2,000 to my name. I couldn't afford Jennifer anymore. I couldn't afford the forensic analysis. I couldn't afford to keep fighting. Rachel came home from work and found me crying. She sat beside me, put her arm around my shoulders, and didn't say anything for a long time. "Finally," she said, "my uncle might be able to help." I looked at her, my vision blurry with tears. "Thomas Sterling," she said. "He's my mom's brother, semi-retired attorney. He used to specialize in fraud and estate law. He owes me a favor. Maybe he'd look at your case." "I can't afford another attorney, Rachel. He might do it pro bono, or at least give advice." She pulled out her phone. "Let me call him." I didn't have any hope left, but I didn't stop her. The next morning, I drove to a small office in Fremont. The building was old, brick with ivy, growing up one side. Inside, the office was cluttered, but organized, filled with law books and file boxes. Behind a mahogany desk sat a man in his mid-60s with sharp blue eyes and silver hair. Thomas Sterling stood and shook my hand. His grip was firm, his smile kind. "Rachel speaks highly of you. Tell me everything." So I did. I told him the whole story, from the beginning, every detail. He listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes on a legal pad. When I finished, he sat back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "Something about this case bothers me," he said. "The quitclaim deed. May I see it?" I pulled up the document on my phone and handed it to him. He studied it for a long moment, zooming in on different sections. "Who's the notary public?" I read the name aloud. "Linda Matthews." He made a note. "Give me a few days. I want to look into some things." "I can't pay you," I said. "At least not right now." He waved a hand dismissively. "Rachel saved my daughter's life once. Talked her out of a very bad decision when she was 16. Consider this payback. Now go home and rest. I'll call you soon." 3 days later, Thomas called. His voice was excited in a controlled, professional way. "Come to my office. I found something." When I arrived, he had papers spread across his desk. "Sit down," he said. "I did some digging into Linda Matthews, the notary public who supposedly witnessed your signature on that quitclaim deed. And her notary license was suspended 3 years ago for fraudulent notarizations. She was caught notarizing documents without actually witnessing signatures. The state revoked her license permanently." My heart started pounding. "So the deed is fake?" "The notarization is definitely invalid, which means the deed wasn't properly executed." He smiled. "I'm filing to have it declared fraudulent immediately. But Tammy," I kept digging. "I hired a private investigator. Her name is Diana Murphy. She's very good. What did she find? Thomas slid a folder across the desk. Diana found that your husband has been embezzling from his employer, small amounts over 2 years, around $200,000 total. He's been hiding it by manipulating invoices and project budgets. I stared at the documents. Bank statements, invoice comparisons, highlighted discrepancies. The penthouse was his escape plan, Thomas said. Steal your property, sell it, disappear with the money. What about Amber and Craig? Thomas pulled out another folder. Amber and Craig filed for bankruptcy 6 months ago. Lost their house. Craig's real estate license was suspended for ethics violations. They're desperate. He paused. Diana couldn't find any medical records for Amber's pregnancy. No doctor visits, no ultrasounds, nothing. You think it's fake? I think it's possible. Thomas leaned forward. Here's what we're going to do. We're taking this to the police and back to court. Fraud, forgery, embezzlement. We're going to bury him. For the first time in weeks, I felt something besides despair. I felt hope. But that night, Derek made his move. I got an alert on my phone. The penthouse was officially listed for sale. $2.8 million, below market value for a quick sale, private buyer. Closing in 1 week. Thomas filed emergency motions the next morning, but the hearing wasn't scheduled for 5 days. If the sale closed first, everything became exponentially more complicated. That same night, I walked out to Rachel's apartment parking lot and found my car broken into. The windows smashed, my laptop stolen, my briefcase with all my backup documents. The glove compartment rifled through. I filed a police report, but the officer was skeptical. You sure someone broke in? Looks like the door was unlocked. The window is smashed, I said, pointing. Could have been vandalism. Separate incident. He made a note. We'll keep an eye out for your stuff, but honestly, most of this never gets recovered. I sat in Rachel's apartment that night, my hands shaking. Derek had taken my home, my money, my reputation. Now he was taking the last of my evidence. I wondered if he'd hired someone to break into my car. I wondered how far he'd go. I wondered if I was safe. 4 days before the scheduled penthouse sale closing, I sat in Judge Morrison's courtroom again. This time, Thomas Sterling sat beside me, calm and prepared. He'd brought 3 banker's boxes of documents. Marcus Brennan looked less confident than before. He kept glancing at the boxes. The judge entered, and we all stood. She sat, we sat, and she looked at the docket. This is an emergency motion to halt sale of property. Mr. Sterling, you're representing Mrs. Walker now? Yes, Your Honor, Thomas said, standing. And I have significant new evidence regarding this case. He started with the notary. Presented documentation that Linda Matthews had lost her license 3 years before supposedly notarizing the quitclaim deed. Showed records from the state licensing board. The deed was fraudulent, invalid, void. Marcus Brennan objected, tried to claim procedural errors could be corrected, that it was just a paperwork mistake. Then, Thomas dropped the bombshell about Derek's embezzlement. Your Honor, Mr. Walker has been systematically stealing from his employer, Northwest Construction Management, for approximately 2 years. He presented bank records, invoice comparisons, internal audit documents he'd subpoenaed. The total theft appears to be close to $300,000. The judge's expression shifted. Where is Mr. Walker? Derek sat at the defendant's table, his face pale. Marcus leaned over and whispered urgently to him. Mr. Walker, the judge said, are you aware of these allegations? Derek stood slowly. Your Honor, he paused. This is false. My wife is fabricating evidence. Thomas remained standing. Your Honor, I have sworn statements from 3 of Mr. Walker's co-workers, copies of original invoices compared to submitted invoices, bank records showing transfers to offshore accounts. This is documented, verifiable fraud. Marcus Brennan looked like he'd been punched. Your Honor, I need to consult with my client. I wasn't informed of any of these allegations prior to today. The judge called a 15-minute recess. In the hallway, I saw Derek's family. His mother Barbara had arrived, looking confused and worried. Amber stood near the women's restroom, her face flushed, speaking rapidly into her phone. Craig hovered nearby, fidgeting with his tie. I needed to use the restroom. As I pushed through the door, I heard Amber's voice echoing off the tile walls. She was in a stall, still on the phone. She's lying, Mom. Please tell me she's lying. Amber's voice was panicked. Derek promised this would work. He said she'd never figure it out. I stood frozen by the sinks. No, I didn't know about any embezzlement. That's insane. Why would he? Amber's voice broke. Mom, what if this all falls apart? Craig and I have nothing. We need this money. I quietly pulled out my phone and started a voice recording. In Washington, 1. Party consent was legal. I could record without her knowledge. The baby thing was Craig's idea, Amber continued. He said it would make us look sympathetic, make her look cruel. She paused. I didn't think she'd hire a real attorney. Derek said she couldn't afford it. There was a long pause while Barbara apparently spoke. I know. Amber sounded like she was crying now. I'm sorry. We were desperate. The house, the bankruptcy, everything. Derek said this was the only way. He said she owed him for putting up with her family, her grandmother's attitude. He made it sound like we deserved this. I recorded for another 2 minutes. Amber admitted the pregnancy was fake, admitted they'd planned to fake a miscarriage after the sale, admitted she'd lied in her sworn statement about me threatening her. She admitted everything. When she finally hung up and left the stall, she found me standing there. Her face went white. You, she started. I held up my phone. I recorded everything. She lunged for the phone. I stepped back, and she lost her balance, grabbing the sink. Her fake pregnancy belly shifted visibly under her dress, the padding moving wrong. We stared at each other for a long moment. Then Amber's expression crumbled, and she started crying. Real tears this time. Please, she whispered. We have nothing. We're going to lose everything. You were trying to steal my home, I said quietly. You called me a liar. You said I threatened you and your baby. A baby that doesn't exist. I didn't know what else to do, she sobbed. I walked out and found Thomas in the hallway. I handed him my phone. Listen to this. When we returned to the courtroom, Thomas requested to submit additional evidence. The judge allowed it. Thomas played the recording for the court. The courtroom was silent, except for Amber's voice admitting to fraud, conspiracy, and perjury. When it finished, the judge looked at Derek. Mr. Walker, do you wish to respond? Derek sat motionless. His attorney, Marcus Brennan, stood. Your Honor, I need to withdraw as counsel. Effective immediately. This is beyond the scope of what I agreed to represent. The judge allowed it. Marcus gathered his papers and left, not even looking at Derek. Your Honor, Derek said, standing, his voice desperate. My wife? She's twisting everything. She's always been manipulative. The money I moved, I was protecting our assets from her reckless spending. The penthouse, I just wanted what I was entitled to as her husband. Thomas stood. Your Honor, I have one more piece of evidence. He pulled out a laptop and set it on the table. This belongs to Lauren Martinez. She works at Northwest Construction Management. She's been in a relationship with Mr. Walker for 18 months. My stomach dropped. Derek had a girlfriend? Miss Martinez came forward yesterday after Mr. Walker ended their relationship. Thomas opened the laptop and turned it toward the judge. She has text messages, emails, and photographs documenting their affair. More importantly, she has messages where Mr. Walker explicitly discusses his plan to steal the penthouse. He pulled up a text thread, Derek's number at the top, messages that read, "Once we have the penthouse, we're set. She'll never see it coming. Everything I've put up with, all her family's condescension, it'll be worth it. 3 million split with Amber and Craig, and we still walk away with over 2 million. Another message. Coached Amber today on what to say in court. She's got the victim act down. The fake pregnancy belly looks real. Judge will eat it up. The judge's expression was thunderous. She looked at Derek. Do you have anything to say? Derek's face had gone red. That, he sputtered, that's private. She had no right to share private conversations. Those private conversations detailed criminal conspiracy, the judge said coldly. She turned to the bailiff. Contact the prosecutor's office. She looked at Thomas. I'm granting Mrs. Walker full, immediate ownership of the Penthouse property. All previous orders are vacated, including the restraining order. Mr. Walker, you have 24 hours to remove yourself from the property. She made notes on her papers. I'm ordering you to pay Mrs. Walker's legal fees in full, and I'm referring this case to the district attorney for investigation into fraud, forgery, embezzlement, and perjury. Derek started yelling. You can't do this. That penthouse, I earned it. 5 years of my life, dealing with her and her stuck-up dead grandmother. The bailiff moved toward him. Derek threw his papers across the table. Amber, standing near the gallery, started crying hysterically. Craig tried to lead her out, but she collapsed, her fake belly bunching awkwardly. Barbara sat in the gallery, her face in her hands, crying. The judge ordered Derek into custody, pending further investigation. As the bailiff handcuffed him, Derek looked at me with pure hatred. You'll regret this, he hissed. You think you've won? You've destroyed my entire family. No, I said quietly. You did that yourself. The next morning, I stood in my penthouse for the first time in over a month. It felt foreign and familiar at once. Many of my grandmother's belongings were gone. Furniture missing, walls bare where paintings used to hang. The Chihuly sculpture was gone. Most of the art collection was gone. Thomas had arranged for the locks to be changed overnight. Building security had been notified. Derek was in jail, denied bail due to flight risk and the seriousness of the charges. Over the next week, I learned the full extent of the damage. Derek's employer, Northwest Construction Management, conducted a complete audit. The embezzlement total was actually closer to $320,000. Derek had been stealing in small increments, altering invoices, creating fake vendors, and pocketing the difference. He faced 10 to 15 years in prison if convicted. Amber and Craig were charged as accomplices to fraud and conspiracy. Amber admitted in a formal statement that the pregnancy had been fake from the start. She'd used a prosthetic belly purchased online and planned to fake a miscarriage after the sale closed. Craig had been preparing to broker the sale through a shell company he'd created, planning to take a 15% commission while hiding their involvement. Derek's mother, Barbara, publicly disowned both her children. She gave an interview to a local news station, tearfully apologizing to me and saying she'd raised her children better than this. The interview went viral locally. Thomas and Diana worked to track down my stolen property. Some items had already been sold to private collectors and galleries. Those were harder to recover. But Derek's assets were frozen to pay restitution. His truck, his watch collection, his golf clubs, everything was seized. We found records showing he'd sold the Chihuly sculpture for $48,000. Sold 3 of my grandmother's paintings for a combined $92,000. Sold antique furniture to a dealer in Portland for $16,000. All the money went into the offshore account he'd opened. With Derek facing serious prison time, he had leverage to get some money back. He agreed to return $160,000 in exchange for a slightly reduced sentence. It wasn't everything, but it was something. At work, my boss called me personally. Tammy, I owe you an apology. I reacted to rumors instead of facts. Your position is waiting for you whenever you're ready. I returned the following Monday. Friends who doubted me reached out with apologies. I accepted some, ignored others. I learned who really cared. My parents drove up from Portland. My mother cried and apologized for not believing me. My father hugged me for a long time and said he was proud of how I'd fought. They offered to help with the penthouse restoration. But the damage to the penthouse itself was significant. Holes in walls where Derek had removed art. Scratches on the hardwood where furniture had been dragged. The marble countertop in the kitchen was cracked. The master bedroom closet had been torn apart. I hired an interior designer named Emily Hart. She was young, maybe 28, trying to build her own design business after leaving a larger firm. She was a single mother, with a 6-year-old daughter, working hard to make it on her own. I saw something of myself in her determination. We worked together over the next 6 weeks to restore the penthouse. Not to exactly how it was before, but to something new. Something that honored my grandmother's memory while also being mine. We repainted in soft grays and warm creams, installed new light fixtures that made the space glow, refinished the hardwood floors, replaced the broken countertop with stunning white quartz. I bought new art from local artists, pieces that spoke to me. I found a new Chihuly piece at a gallery, different from the stolen one, but equally beautiful. Emily designed a reading nook by the windows where I could sit and watch the ferries cross the bay, just like I used to do with my grandmother. The first night I slept in the fully restored penthouse, I cried. But this time, they were tears of relief, of gratitude, of knowing I'd survived something meant to destroy me. Thomas and I formed a partnership of sorts. I used part of my recovered funds to start a non-profit foundation. We called it Patricia's Promise, named after my grandmother. The foundation's mission was to help women facing property fraud and financial abuse in divorces or relationships. Thomas's firm provided legal services on a sliding scale. Diana's investigation services were available at reduced rates for foundation clients. We connected women with resources, support groups, and legal help. Emily designed the foundation's office space, creating a warm, welcoming environment that didn't feel institutional. We hired a social worker and a financial counselor. Within 3 months, we'd helped 12 women navigate situations similar to mine. I also started speaking publicly about my experience. I gave talks at women's groups, business organizations, and legal conferences. I talked about recognizing financial abuse, protecting your assets, and fighting back when someone tries to take what's yours. The story got media attention. Local news, then regional, then a segment on a national morning show. I wasn't seeking fame, but I realized my story could help others recognize the warning signs before it was too late. Derek pleaded guilty to embezzlement, fraud, and forgery. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison, with possibility of parole after 8. Amber received 3 years probation and community service for her role. Craig lost his real estate license permanently and received 2 years probation. On the day of Derek's sentencing, I attended the hearing. Not because I wanted to see him suffer, but because I wanted to look him in the eye one more time. When the judge asked if I wanted to make a statement, I stood. I looked at Derek, sitting at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, looking smaller than I remembered. "You tried to take everything from me," I said. "My home, my money, my reputation, my dignity. You made me question my own sanity. You turned people I loved against me. You made me feel powerless. But you failed. Because the truth is stronger than lies, and I'm stronger than you ever gave me credit for." I turned to the judge. This man needs to face consequences for what he did. Not just to me, but to his employer, to the court, to everyone he deceived. Thank you for holding him accountable. Derek never looked at me during my statement. When the judge sentenced him to 12 years, he finally broke down crying. I felt nothing watching him. Not satisfaction, not anger, not even pity, just a sense of closure. 2 months after Derek's sentencing, I stood on my penthouse balcony at sunset. The Seattle skyline glowed pink and gold. A ferry cut across Elliott Bay, its lights reflecting on the water. Behind me, the penthouse was warm and beautiful, filled with new memories waiting to be made. I'd been thinking a lot about my grandmother lately, wishing I could tell her what happened. Wishing I could thank her not just for the inheritance, but for teaching me strength. Grandma Patricia had been divorced twice, widowed once. She'd built her art dealership from nothing in an industry that didn't respect women. She'd faced discrimination, harassment, theft, betrayal, but she'd never given up. She'd protected what was hers. She'd built an empire on her own terms. When she left me the penthouse with the stipulation that it be in my name only, I'd thought she was being paranoid, overly cautious, distrustful. Now I understood she was being wise. She knew what it meant to be a woman with assets. She knew how people could turn on you when money was involved. She'd protected me the only way she could, by making sure I had something that belonged to me alone. The foundation, Patricia's promise, was growing faster than I'd anticipated. We'd helped 32 women in 4 months. Some cases were resolved quickly. Others, like mine, were complicated and lengthy. But every woman who walked through our doors left knowing she wasn't alone. That someone believed her, that she had a chance to fight back. I'd hired 3 more staff members, a second attorney, another investigator, and an administrative coordinator. Emily had joined the board of directors. Rachel was our volunteer coordinator. Even my mother had started helping with fundraising. I'd also started teaching workshops on financial literacy and asset protection, teaching women about prenuptial agreements, trust structures, and how to maintain financial independence within a marriage. Things I wished I'd understood better before marrying Derek. The media attention had brought in donations. We'd received a $50,000 grant from a women's foundation in California. Local businesses were sponsoring fundraising events. We had enough funding to help more women and expand our services. But beyond the foundation work, I was rebuilding my own life. I'd been promoted at the architecture firm, given leadership on a major downtown development project. My reputation had been restored, and with it came new opportunities. I'd been invited to speak at a national architects conference about resilience and professional recovery after personal crisis. I'd started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but I was learning to trust again. Learning that not everyone was like Derek. Learning that I could open my heart without losing myself. I'd reconciled with my parents. It had taken time, long conversations about trust and belief and the importance of listening. But we were rebuilding our relationship. They'd become active supporters of the foundation, attending every fundraising event. Most importantly, I'd learned to trust myself again. To trust my instincts, my worth, my strength. One evening, I was working on the foundation website, preparing to record a video message for women considering reaching out to us. I sat at my kitchen table, my laptop open, thinking about what I wanted to say. I hit record and began speaking. If you're watching this, you're probably in a situation that feels impossible. Maybe someone is trying to take what's yours. Maybe they're telling you you're crazy, that you're imagining things, that you're the problem. Maybe everyone believes them, instead of you. Maybe you're running out of money, running out of time, running out of hope. I understand. I've been there. I know what it feels like to lose everything while everyone watches and does nothing. I know what it feels like when the person who promised to love you becomes the person trying to destroy you. But I want you to know something important. Your property isn't just real estate or bank accounts or possessions. Your property is your security. Your name on that deed, your name on that account. Those aren't just pieces of paper. They're your power. They're your ability to stand on your own, to make your own choices, to control your own future. Don't let anyone diminish your worth. Don't let anyone gaslight you into believing you're unstable, or selfish, or wrong for protecting what's yours. If someone who claims to love you is systematically tearing you down, taking your resources, and turning others against you, that's not love. That's abuse. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. If someone's behavior doesn't match their words, believe the behavior. If you feel like you're constantly walking on eggshells or defending yourself or apologizing for things that aren't your fault, pay attention to that feeling. And most importantly, fight for what's yours. Not just the house or the money or the possessions, but your dignity, your truth, your future. You deserve to be believed. You deserve to be safe. You deserve to keep what you've earned or inherited or built. It won't be easy. There will be times when you want to give up, when the legal system feels stacked against you, when your own family doubts you, when you're down to your last dollar and your last bit of hope, but you're stronger than you know. You have more power than you realize, and you don't have to fight alone. There are people who will believe you, who will help you, who will stand with you. I paused, feeling emotion rising in my chest. My grandmother left me this penthouse. But more than that, she left me a lesson. She taught me that a woman needs her own foundation. Not just a place to live, but a base to stand on. Something that belongs to her alone. Something no one can take away without a fight. I almost lost that foundation. Someone I trusted, someone I loved, almost stole it from me. But I fought back, and I won. Not because I was smarter or stronger or braver than you, but because I refused to give up. Because I found people who believed me. Because I held on to my truth, even when everyone else believed lies. You can do the same. Your story might be different from mine. Your battle might look different. But the core truth is the same. You deserve to protect what's yours. You deserve to stand in your own power. You deserve justice. So if you're watching this, if you're scared and alone and unsure what to do next, reach out, call us, email us, walk through our doors. We believe you. We'll fight with you. We'll help you reclaim what's yours. Because no one gets to steal your life. No one gets to erase you from your own story. No one gets to take what you've built without consequences. Stand up, fight back, reclaim your power. I stopped the recording and sat back, wiping tears from my cheeks. My phone rang a moment later. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Hi, is this? The voice was hesitant. Female, young. Is this Patricia's promise? Yes, I said. This is Tommy. How can I help you? My husband just told me I need to move out of our house. The house my parents left me when they died. He says he has a right to it because we're married. He's changed the locks. I don't know what to do. I grabbed a notebook and pen. Tell me everything, I said. We're going to get through this together. As she spoke, I looked around my penthouse. At the restored beauty, the new art, the life I'd rebuilt. I thought about my grandmother, about all the women who'd come before me, fighting their own battles for dignity and autonomy. And I thought about all the women who'd come after, who'd walk through our foundation doors looking for help, looking for hope. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. And I was using everything I'd learned, everything I'd endured, to help others do the same. Derek had tried to take my penthouse. Instead, I'd taken everything. Not just the property, not just the money, but my power back, my voice back, my future back. And now, I was helping other women do the same. The conversation with the woman on the phone lasted an hour. By the end, she had an appointment scheduled with Thomas for the next morning. She had Diana's number to start an investigation. She had hope. After we hung up, I stood on the balcony again, watching the city lights flicker on as darkness fell. The Space Needle glowed in the distance. Boats moved through the bay. Life continued, beautiful and complicated and full of possibility. I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the fight, the victory, the lessons learned in pain and forged in fire. And I thought about the question I'd been asking myself for months. How did I let it get so far? How did I miss the signs? The truth was, I'd seen them. The small, controlling behaviors, the resentment of my success, the way Derek's family felt entitled to my inheritance. But I'd explained them away. I'd wanted to believe in the marriage. I'd wanted to keep the peace. I'd learned a hard lesson. Sometimes keeping the peace means losing yourself. Sometimes the person sleeping beside you is the enemy. Sometimes love is a mask for something darker. But I'd also learned that survival is possible. That justice exists, even when it feels impossible. That women are stronger than the world tells us we are. I'd learned to listen to my instincts, to protect what's mine, to fight when necessary, and to never apologize for standing in my power. These were the lessons I carried now. The lessons I shared with every woman who walked through our foundation doors. The lessons my grandmother had tried to teach me, that I'd finally learned the hard way. So I want to ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where someone tried to take what was rightfully yours? Maybe not a house or money, but your voice, your choices, your power? How did you stand up for yourself? What gave you the strength to fight back? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Your experiences matter. Your strength matters. And sharing your story might help someone else who's going through something similar right now. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think or feel or remember your own battles, please like this video. Subscribe to hear more stories about women who refuse to be broken. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they're not alone, that they're not crazy, that they can fight back and win. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for believing that women deserve to protect what's theirs, to stand in their power, and to live lives free from manipulation and control. Remember, your property is your power. Your name on that deed, that account, that business, it matters. Protect it. Fight for it. Never let anyone convince you that standing up for yourself is selfish or wrong. Stay strong, trust yourself, and know that you're never alone in this fight. Until next time, this is Tammy, reminding you that sometimes the greatest victory isn't just keeping what's yours, it's helping others do the same.